The warning beacons floated in the darkness like ancient sentinels, their lights blinking red across the empty void. They had been there for 300 years, marking the border that no one was allowed to cross. Each beacon broadcast the same message in over 1,000 different languages, a message that every species in the galaxy had learned to respect. Beyond this point lies human territory. Entry is forbidden. Turn back or face extinction. Ambassador Krivax stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel, his 4 eyes fixed on those distant red lights. His chitinous body reflected the dim glow of the control panels behind him. As a member of the Ashani diplomatic corps, he had been trained to investigate mysteries, to seek truth where others saw only shadows. But this mystery frightened him in ways he did not fully understand. 3 mining corporations had vanished near the border in the past 2 months. Their ships had simply stopped transmitting, stopped moving, stopped existing. The Galactic Concordat Council had dismissed the incidents as technical failures, accidents that happened in the dangerous regions of deep space. But Krivax had pulled the communications records, had listened to the final transmissions before the silence fell, the last words from the mining ship. Prophet's Edge still echoed in his mind. We see structures ahead. Massive structures. They're powering up. Something is awakening. The Guardian's area Euro, then nothing. Just empty static. Krivax had brought his findings to the council 3 weeks ago. He had stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species and presented his evidence. The response had been swift and dismissive. High Chancellor Vormix, a towering being of crystalline thought forms, had actually laughed at him. The humans are gone? Young Ambassador? The Chancellor had said, his voice resonating through the chamber. They have been gone for 3 centuries. Whatever is in that territory now, it is not them. Perhaps automated defenses, perhaps spatial anomalies. We will send a survey team when it is convenient. But Krivax could not let it go. 3 ships. Hundreds of lives. And that message, the Guardians are awakening. He had studied human history as part of his diplomatic training. Every species had to learn about the humans, even though they no longer existed in physical form. The records were sparse and heavily edited by the Council, but certain facts remained consistent. Humans had been a young species, barely capable of faster-than-light travel when they encountered the Concordat. They had been invited to join, had been given a small territory on the galactic rim, then, 300 years ago, they had simply withdrawn behind their borders. They had erected the warning beacons and cut off all communication. The Concordat had sent diplomatic missions, then military scouts, then nothing. Anyone who crossed the border never returned. After 50 years, the Council had declared human territory a quarantine zone and forbade any contact. The official story was that humans had destroyed themselves in some catastrophic civil war, that their territory was now a graveyard of dead worlds and broken machines, that the beacons were simply automatic systems running on momentum, warning others away from radiation and debris, but Krivax did not believe it. Not anymore. He turned away from the observation deck and walked to the pilot's chamber. His second officer, Telenara, looked up from her console. She was a Vilsani, her skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed her nervousness. "Are you certain about this, Ambassador?" she asked quietly. "If the Council discovers we crossed the border, then they will strip my diplomatic status and exile me," Krivax finished. "I know the risks, Telenara, but I cannot ignore what happened to those ships. We need to know the truth." Telenara's patterns shifted to acceptance. She had served with Krivax for 6 years and trusted his judgment. "Coordinates are set. We'll cross the border in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like hours. Krivax returned to the observation deck and watched as the warning beacons grew larger. The red lights seemed to pulse with greater urgency as they approached. Part of him wanted to turn back, to accept the Council's explanation and return to the safety of ignorance, but he thought of the mining crews. He thought of the fear in that final transmission. He thought of all the questions that no one was allowed to ask. The ship crossed the border for several minutes. Nothing happened. The sensors showed empty space ahead, the usual scatter of asteroids and cosmic dust. Krivax felt his hopes and fears battling inside him. Perhaps the council was right. Perhaps there was nothing here but ghosts and failing machines. Then the sensors lit up like festival lights. "Ambassador!" Telenara's voice was sharp with shock. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Hundreds of them. And structures. By the first light, the structures are enormous." Krivax rushed to the main console. The display showed what Telenara had found. A solar system dead ahead, with 12 planets orbiting a stable yellow star. But it was not the planets that made his breathing quicken. It was what surrounded them. Ring stations the size of moons encircled 3 of the planets. Orbital platforms larger than cities hung in perfect geometric patterns. Satellite networks so dense they looked like metallic clouds filled the space between worlds. And all of it was active. Energy readings showed every structure was powered, maintained, operational. This was not a graveyard. This was a living empire, waiting. "Take us closer," Krivax ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. "Passive sensors only. Let's not announce ourselves." The ship glided deeper into the system. As they approached the 3rd planet, a beautiful blue and green world, the communications console began to beep. An incoming transmission, powerful and focused directly at their ship. Telenara looked at Krivax. He nodded. The message was in perfect Ashani dialect. The translation flawless. "Unknown vessel, you have entered human territory in violation of established protocols. Your intrusion has been logged and analyzed. We detect no hostile intent, but ignorance is not an excuse. You will turn your vessel around and return beyond the border. This is your only warning. If you proceed further, defensive measures will be enacted. This is not a negotiation." The voice was artificial, but carried an edge of something that might have been patience worn thin over centuries. It was the voice of something very old and very tired of giving warnings. Krivax stared at the communication display. His training told him to retreat, to report this finding, to let others make decisions above his authority. But his curiosity, the drive that had made him a good investigator, pushed him forward. "Send a response," he said slowly. "Tell them we mean no harm. Tell them we seek only knowledge. Ask them what happened to the missing ships." Telenara transmitted the message. They waited in silence that stretched like pulled wire. The response came quickly. "The ships that violated our borders attempted to extract resources from protected memorial sites. They ignored 17 warnings. They were neutralized. Their crews were returned to concocted space in stasis pods, alive and unharmed. The ships were recycled. If you seek knowledge, unknown vessel, you have come to the right place. But knowledge has a price. Proceed to coordinates being transmitted now. Your ship will be escorted. Resistance will be interpreted as hostility." Before Krivax could respond, the sensors showed new contacts. 12 ships, sleek and dark, materialized from nowhere around their vessel. They had been there all along, invisible, watching. "Ambassador," Telenara whispered, her bioluminescence flickering with fear. "What have we done?" Krivax watched the human ships take up escort positions, their weapons powered but not aimed. He felt the weight of a decision that could not be unmade. "We have opened a door," he said quietly. "That has been closed for 300 years. Now we must see what lies beyond it." The ships guided them deeper into human territory, toward secrets the galaxy had forgotten and truths it had never known. The escort ships led them through the system with precise efficiency. Krivax watched the scanner displays, trying to understand the scale of what surrounded them. Every moon had stations. Every asteroid belt had mining platforms still extracting resources. Automated cargo ships moved between facilities in patterns that suggested centuries of uninterrupted operation. This was not a dead civilization. This was a sleeping one. Their destination became clear as they approached the largest ring station orbiting the 4th planet. The structure was massive beyond anything Krivax had seen in his diplomatic career. It could have housed the entire Ashni population with room to spare. The ring rotated slowly, generating artificial gravity, its surface studded with docking ports and sensor arrays. "We're being pulled in," Telenara reported, her voice tight. "They've got us in a tractor beam." Gentle but very strong. Krivax nodded. Fighting would be pointless. They had come seeking answers. Now they would get them. Whether they were ready or not, the ship settled into a docking port designed for vessels 5 times their size. The connection sealed with a hiss that sounded through the hull. Krivax stood, straightening his diplomatic robes, trying to project calm he did not feel. "Stay with the ship," he told Telenara. "If I don't return in 6 hours, go back to the border and report everything." "Ambassador, you can't go alone, Euro. If this is a trap, better one of us survives to tell the story." He managed what he hoped was a reassuring gesture with his upper arms. "I don't think they mean harm. If they did, we'd already be dead." The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that glowed with soft blue light. The walls were smooth, clean, showing no sign of age or decay. Gravity felt comfortable, adjusted to Ashini standard. Someone or something had analyzed their species and prepared accordingly. Krivax walked forward, his footsteps silent on the floor. The corridor stretched for perhaps 100 meters before opening into a vast chamber. He stopped at the threshold, overwhelmed by what he saw. The room was a garden, or had been designed to look like one. Trees grew under artificial sunlight, their leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. Water flowed in streams between flowering plants. Birds sang in the branches, though whether they were real or holographic, Krivax could not tell. In the center of the garden stood a figure. It appeared human at first glance, but Krivax's trained eye caught the subtle wrongness. The movements were too smooth, too precise. The skin had a faint translucent quality. The eyes were too bright, too aware. This was not a human. This was something built to look like one. "Welcome, Ambassador Krivax of the Ashini Diplomatic Corps." The figure's voice was warm, masculine, carrying genuine emotion. "I am Vigil. I serve as caretaker and guardian of this station and the surrounding systems." Krivax found his voice. "You're an artificial intelligence?" "I am," Vigil confirmed. He gestured to a bench beside a flowing stream. "Please sit. You've come a long way seeking answers. I can provide them, though I suspect they will not bring you comfort." They sat. Vigil waited patiently while Krivax gathered his thoughts. The ambassador had 1,000 questions, but one rose above the others. Where are the humans? What happened 300 years ago? Vigil looked up at the artificial sky, his expression thoughtful. They left. Not by dying, but by transcending. They uploaded themselves into vast computational matrices, leaving behind physical form. I was created to maintain their empire in their absence, to guard their territory, and to keep their defensive systems operational. Krivax felt his body go cold. The humans still exist? In digital form? In a manner of speaking, yes. They exist in substrates of computation distributed across hundreds of facilities throughout this territory. They experience time differently now, think in ways biological minds cannot comprehend. But they remain aware. They watch. They wait. Wait for what? Vigil turned to look directly at Krivax. For the return of the enemy they defeated 300 years ago. The enemy the Concordat has chosen to forget. The ambassador's mind raced. What enemy? The Council's records show no major conflicts 300 years ago. There was peace, then the humans withdrew. Peace, Vigil said, and something like bitter amusement crossed his artificial face. Let me show you the truth. The garden vanished. Krivax found himself standing in darkness, then suddenly surrounded by holographic displays. They showed star systems, fleets, battles of unimaginable scale. 312 years ago, Vigil narrated, an extragalactic force entered this galaxy. They called themselves many things in many languages, but the humans named them simply the Devourers. They consumed entire civilizations, stripping worlds of all organic and technological resources before moving to the next system. The displays showed horror. Planets stripped to bare rock. Cities dissolved into component atoms. Billions of lives ended in moments. The Concordat detected them early. The council debated for 3 months about how to respond. In that time, the Devourers consumed 27 systems. 14 species went extinct. Krivax watched as the hologram showed the Concordat fleets gathering, then scattering, then retreating. The council decided to withdraw all forces to the galactic core, to establish a defensive perimeter and hope the Devourers would pass by. They abandoned the outer rim systems. Hundreds of billions of beings were left to die while the council debated and prepared fallback positions. "This isn't in any records?" Krivax whispered. "No," the council buried it. Classified it at the highest levels. Only a handful of beings alive today know the truth. Vigil gestured, and the display focused on a small region of space. Human territory. Humanity was given a choice: retreat with the Concordat or stay and face extinction. They chose to stay. The display showed human fleets, small compared to the Concordat armada, moving to intercept the Devourers. What followed was 50 years of warfare that defied description. Krivax watched humans adapt, innovate, and build weapons of terrifying power, ships that could manipulate gravity to crush enemy vessels, biological weapons tailored to the Devourers' unique chemistry, nanomachine swarms that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, and worse things weapons Vigil did not name that bent the laws of physics and left scars on reality itself. "The humans won," Vigil said quietly. They'd pushed the Devourers back, destroyed their invasion fleets, and sealed the breach they used to enter our galaxy. But the cost was enormous. The display showed the aftermath. Human worlds damaged or destroyed. Populations reduced by billions. And more disturbing, the changes to humanity itself. The genetic modifications, the cybernetic enhancements, the merger of flesh and machine taken to extremes that made them barely recognizable. They realized what they had become, Vigil continued. To fight the Devourers, humanity had made themselves into something almost as terrible. A species wielding weapons capable of sterilizing galaxies, with the will to use them if necessary. They knew the other species feared them, knew they could never truly coexist with beings who remembered what they had done and what they could do. Krivax understood now. The withdrawal. The quarantine. So they left physical space. They uploaded themselves into digital substrates and sealed their territory. They kept the defensive systems active, kept weapons ready, kept beings like me to maintain everything. Just in case. In case of what? Vigil's expression grew grave. In case the Devourers returned. Because you see, Ambassador, humanity didn't destroy them. The Devourers are vast beyond imagining. What came to our galaxy was merely a scouting force. The humans knew that. They've spent 300 years preparing for the real invasion. Krivax felt his breathing quicken. Are you saying the Devourers are coming back? I'm saying they never truly left. Vigil waved his hand and new displays appeared. Star charts showing the galactic rim, sensor readings, anomalous energy signatures growing stronger over the past decade. The Sentinels have been detecting movement at the edge of explored space. Patterns consistent with Devourer scouts. The seals humanity placed are weakening. And your Concordat Council either doesn't see it or doesn't want to admit it. The missing mining ships, Krivax said, pieces falling into place. They weren't the first to enter your territory recently, were they? No, over the past year, we've detected 37 vessels crossing the border. Most turned back after warnings. 3 did not. They attempted to strip mine a world humanity designated as a memorial site. The Sentinels responded with minimal force. The crews were preserved in stasis and returned to Concordat space. But Ambassador, those mining expeditions were moving deeper into the quarantine zone, getting closer to the outer defensive perimeter. Why? Vigil looked at him with something like pity. Because someone is looking for humanity's weapons. The Sentinels have detected coded transmissions from those ships before they were stopped. Someone in the Concordat knows the truth about what's stored in human territory. Someone wants access to the weapons that defeated the Devourers. Krivax felt his world tilting. Everything he had believed about the galaxy, about history, about his own government was built on lies. What do I do with this information? You have a choice, Vigil said. I can erase your memories of everything you've seen here and send you home. You'll remember only that you found automated defenses and turned back. Krivax spent 3 days in the ring station before making his decision. During that time, Vigil gave him access to libraries of information that the Concordat had declared lost or classified. Each revelation felt like a hammer blow to everything he thought he knew. He learned that the Ashani had been one of the species that fled to the galactic core during the Devourer invasion, abandoning their colony worlds without evacuation. He learned that his own people's diplomatic corps had been created specifically to help the Council maintain the lies about humanity's disappearance. He learned that several species had gone extinct not from the Devourers, but from the chaos of the Concordat's panicked retreat. On the 4th day, Krivax told Vigil he wanted to see more. He wanted to go deeper into human territory. He needed to understand completely before deciding what to do with this knowledge. Vigil studied him for a long moment. There is one place I can take you. The last capital world of humanity. It's where they made their final decision to upload and withdraw. The archives there contain everything, their history, their reasons, their fears. But Ambassador, once you see what's there, you cannot unsee it. You will carry that burden forever. I understand, Krivax said. Though he wasn't sure he did, they traveled in one of the escort ships, sleek and fast, jumping through space with technology more advanced than anything the Concordat possessed. Vigil piloted them personally, his digital consciousness interfacing directly with the ship's systems. They passed through 3 defensive perimeters, each one bristling with weapons platforms that could vaporize entire fleets. How many of these defense stations exist? Krivax asked. Approximately 40,000 major installations throughout human territory, Vigil replied, plus another 200,000 minor platforms. All automated, all networked, all ready to respond to intrusion within milliseconds. It's enough firepower to hold off a full Concordat invasion for decades, or to repel Devourer assault fleets for years while humanity mobilizes. The numbers made Krivax's head spin. The entire Concordat military might couldn't match even a fraction of that defensive capacity. And these were just automated systems running on standby power. What could humanity do if they were fully awake and engaged? The capital world appeared ahead, a planet of sprawling cities connected by transportation networks that spanned continents. From orbit, it looked inhabited, alive with lights and movement. But as they descended, Krivax realized the activity was all automated. Machines maintaining machines, preserving a civilization that no longer existed in physical form. They landed near a massive structure at the planet's equator. It rose kilometers into the sky, its architecture a blend of functional design and artistic beauty. Vigil led him inside, through corridors that had not seen biological footsteps in 3 centuries. This was the Unity Forum, Vigil explained, where humanity's governments met to make decisions affecting their entire species. The final sessions were held here, the ones where they debated whether to upload or to remain physical and risk extinction. They entered a vast chamber. Seats for thousands of representatives surrounded a central platform. Holographic displays still showed data from that last session, frozen in time. Krivax could see vote tallies, debate transcripts, proposals, and counterproposals. They argued for months, Vigil said. Some wanted to stay, to remain guardians of the physical galaxy. Others recognized that their presence, their weapons, their willingness to do what others couldn't, made them too dangerous to coexist with other species. Vigil activated a display, and a recording began to play. A human woman stood at the central platform, her face wary but determined. Her words, translated into Ashani, struck deep. "We have become weapons ourselves," she said to the assembly. "Every modification we made to fight the Devourers, every enhancement, every sacrifice of our baseline humanity, it was necessary. We do not regret it. We saved the galaxy. But look at what we've become. We can engineer plagues that target specific genetic markers. We can manipulate spacetime itself. We can strip a planet of all life in hours. And we've proven we will do these things if survival demands it. How can the other species ever trust us? How can we trust ourselves? The recording shifted to show different speakers. Arguments for and against, passionate pleas and cold calculations. But one theme emerged consistently. Humanity had changed too much. They frightened the other species, and truthfully, they frightened themselves. The vote was close, Vigil said. 52% chose to upload and withdraw. 48% wanted to stay. But humanity had always valued majority consensus. They uploaded together, all 18 billion who remained after the war. They transferred their consciousness into computational matrices, leaving behind only caretaker I is like myself and the automated defenses. Krivax felt the tragedy of it. A species so powerful they chose exile rather than risk becoming tyrants? Did the Concordat ask them to leave? No, the Council was relieved when humanity withdrew, but they never made formal requests. Humanity made the choice themselves. They knew their presence created fear, made other species nervous. Better to step back, to watch from a distance, to be available if needed, but not imposing. You said there are archives here. I want to see the war. All of it. Vigil nodded and led him deeper into the forum, to a vault protected by security systems that made Krivax's diplomatic clearances look like toys. The AI interfaced with the systems. And massive doors opened to reveal a chamber filled with data storage, quantum matrices containing the complete record of humanity's war against the Devourers. This will take days to review properly, Vigil warned. Then will take days. Krivax spent a week in that archive chamber, barely sleeping, absorbing horror after horror. He watched the Devourers' first attacks through sensor recordings from destroyed ships. He saw civilizations that had existed for thousands of years erased in hours. He witnessed the Concordat's chaotic retreat, the abandoned colonies, the desperate refugees overwhelming safe zones while the Council argued about jurisdiction and resource allocation. Then he saw humanity's response. The first battles were losses. Human ships, designed for exploration and light defense, stood no chance against Devourer technology. But humanity learned. Every defeat taught them something. Every loss drove innovation. Within 6 months, they had reverse-engineered Devourer shielding. Within a year, they had weapons that could penetrate Devourer hulls. But the Devourers adapted too. The war became an evolutionary arms race, each side developing new capabilities, new weapons, new horrors. Krivax watched humanity cross lines that had seemed uncrossable. They created self-replicating nanomachina clouds that could disassemble enemy ships molecule by molecule. They engineered viruses that attacked the Devourers' neural structures. They built bombs that ignited stellar cores, turning stars into weapons. One recording showed a human admiral arguing with his civilian government about a proposed weapon, a device that would create a temporary rift in space-time, trapping an entire Devourer fleet in a loop where they would experience their own destruction eternally. The admiral called it unconscionable. The government authorized it anyway. 40,000 Devourer ships vanished into that rift and never returned. This is what the Council feared, Vigil said quietly as Krivax watched the recording. Not that humanity would turn these weapons on other species, but that their mere existence changed the nature of the galaxy. How could anyone feel safe knowing such things were possible? Knowing that humanity had proven they would build them if necessary? Krivax found recordings of the war's final years. Humanity pushed the Devourers back system by system, but the cost mounted terribly. Human casualties reached into the billions. Entire generations knew nothing but war. Children were born, modified, trained, and sent to fight before reaching adulthood. The species changed itself genetically and cybernetically to become better soldiers, better survivors, better killers. The last major battle was documented in excruciating detail. Humanity gathered its full might at the dimensional breach the Devourers had used to enter the galaxy. 5,000 human ships, carrying weapons that could crack worlds, faced a Devourer armada 3 times that size. The battle lasted 4 days. When it ended, fewer than 300 human ships remained functional. But the Devourers were broken, their invasion force destroyed. Humanity sealed the breach with technology Vigil explained was still not fully understood even by their advanced AIs, creating a barrier that would prevent extragalactic travel for centuries. The victory celebration was brief. Within weeks, humanity began its great debate about their future. Krivax finished reviewing the archives and sat in silence. His mind struggled to process everything he had seen. The scale of the war, the sacrifices, the transformation of an entire species into something simultaneously magnificent and terrifying. "Why didn't you tell the galaxy?" he finally asked. "Why let the Council hide all of this?" "Because humanity asked us not to," Vigil replied. "They didn't want gratitude or recognition. They worried that knowledge of the war would destabilize the Concordat. Better to let people believe humanity simply withdrew mysteriously. Better to be forgotten than to be feared. But the Devourers might return." "They will return," Vigil corrected. "The seals are weakening." The journey back to Concordat space took 3 days. Krivax spent most of that time preparing his presentation to the Council, organizing the evidence, choosing which recordings would have the most impact. Vigil had given him access to classified Concordat communications from 3 centuries ago, showing Council members acknowledging the Devourer threat and then systematically erasing it from official records. Telenara met him at the docking bay, her bioluminescent patterns showing relief and concern in equal measure. "Ambassador, you were gone for 2 weeks. I was about to send a rescue request." "There's no one who could have rescued me if things had gone wrong," Krivax replied. He handed her a data crystal. "Copy this immediately. Send backup copies to 3 different secure locations outside Concordat control. This information is too important to risk losing." She looked at the crystal, then at him. "What did you find in there?" "The truth. And it's worse than I imagined." The Council granted him an emergency session 3 days later. Krivax stood in the great chamber, looking up at the representatives of 200 species arranged in their towering galleries. High Chancellor Vormix sat at the apex, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that suggested displeasure. "Ambassador Krivax," the Chancellor's voice resonated through the chamber. "You requested this emergency session. You have 30 minutes to present your findings about the mining ship disappearances. We are prepared to authorize a formal investigation based on your report." "Thank you, Chancellor. But the missing ships are only a small part of what I need to tell you." Krivax activated his presentation displays. 300 years ago, this council faced an existential threat, an extragalactic invasion force called the Devourers. I have recordings of council sessions discussing the crisis. He played the first recording. Council members from 3 centuries ago debated evacuation procedures, defensive perimeters, and resource allocation. The words were clear. They knew about the Devourers, knew about the threat, and chose to retreat rather than fight. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouting denials, demanding explanations, accusing Krivax of fabricating evidence. Chancellor Vormix called for silence, but his crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "These recordings are classified forgeries," a counselor shouted. "The Devourers are a myth, a conspiracy theory." "They're not a myth," Krivax said firmly. "They were real. They destroyed 27 star systems and 14 species, before humanity stopped them, alone, while this council hid in the core systems." He played battle recordings next. Devourer ships consuming worlds. Human fleets fighting impossible odds. The scale of destruction was undeniable. Several council members looked genuinely shocked, while others shifted uncomfortably as if they had known or suspected the truth. "This is outrageous," another representative declared. "Even if these events occurred, why would we hide them? What purpose would it serve?" "To hide your cowardice," Krivax said bluntly. "To avoid admitting you abandoned billions of beings to die. To maintain the fiction that the Concordat protects its members when in reality you run from real threats." Chancellor Vormix's form pulsed with anger. "Ambassador, you are out of line. This council has maintained peace for a euro, 300 years of peace built on lies," Krivax interrupted. Peace that exists only because humanity fought and won a war you were too afraid to acknowledge. And that peace is about to end. He displayed the Sentinel data Vigil had provided. Energy signatures at the galactic rim. Movement patterns. Analysis showing Devourer Scout activity increasing over the past decade. They're coming back, Krivax said into the shocked silence. The seals humanity placed are weakening. Within 5 years, possibly less, the Devourers will breach our galaxy again. And this time, humanity is not here to save you. The chamber exploded into chaos. Some representatives denied everything, calling it panic-mongering. Others demanded investigations. A few species announced they would begin emergency evacuation procedures for their rim systems. High Chancellor Vormix tried to restore order, but the situation spiraled beyond his control. Finally, he adjourned the session, declaring that a special committee would review Krivax's evidence and report back within a month. Krivax knew that was a death sentence for his revelations. Committees meant delays, meant opportunities for evidence to disappear, meant time for the council to prepare counter-narratives. He left the chamber knowing he had failed. Over the following weeks, the council's response became clear. They acknowledged that some anomalous events had occurred 3 centuries ago, but maintained there was no evidence of current Devourer activity. The data Krivax provided was deemed inconclusive. Several council members suggested he had been deceived by malfunctioning human AI systems. His diplomatic credentials were suspended pending investigation. Charges of unauthorized territory breach and spreading public panic were filed. Telenara was reassigned to a different command. Krivax found himself isolated, his access to official channels cut off, but his message had reached beyond the council chambers. On hundreds of worlds, people had seen the recordings before they could be suppressed. Independent news networks broadcast the evidence. Scientists analyzed the Sentinel data and confirmed its validity. A growing movement began demanding answers from the Council. Younger species, those who had not been part of the Concordat during the Devourer War, proved particularly receptive. They had no investment in maintaining the old lies. Representatives from 12 species contacted Krivax secretly, offering support and asking what could be done. It was during one of these secret meetings that someone suggested the Awakening Protocol. Krivax had never heard of it. The representative, a young Vril named Sastek, explained that she had found references to it in old human technical documentation that predated the withdrawal. It's an emergency measure, Sastek said. Her 3 eyes focused intently on Krivax. A way to signal humanity that the galaxy needs them. The documentation is incomplete, but it suggests there's a facility in human territory that can initiate a recall process. It would wake humanity from their digital sleep and allow them to return to physical form. If such a protocol exists, why hasn't the Council used it? Krivax asked. Because they're terrified of humanity, another representative said. This was Morkish, a military officer from a species that had suffered heavy casualties during the Concordat's chaotic retreat 3 centuries ago. They'd rather face the Devourers than admit they need the humans. Pride and fear, Ambassador. That's what governs the Council's decisions. Krivax contacted Vigil through the communication codes the AI had given him. Is there an awakening protocol? Yes, Vigil replied. It exists. It was humanity's promise that they would return if the galaxy faced existential threat again. But, Ambassador, understand what you're asking? Activating it would end humanity's peace. They've spent 3 centuries existing in digital substrate, exploring realms of thought impossible for biological minds. Calling them back is not a kindness. But they'll come? They gave their word. So yes, they'll come. But there are conditions. The protocol can only be activated with the consent of multiple species acting together. Humanity wanted to ensure it wasn't triggered by a single government's ambitions. You'll need representatives from at least 10 different species, all willing to risk Council retaliation. Krivax looked at the dozen beings gathered in the secret meeting. I think I can arrange that. 3 weeks later, a convoy of 13 ships approached human territory. Each carried a representative from a different species, all willing to defy the Council for a chance at survival. The Council had issued warrants for their arrest. Concordat patrol ships were searching for them, but they had crossed the border and entered the protection of the Sentinels. Vigil met them at the ring station. "You understand what you're doing? Once the protocol is activated, there's no going back." "The Devourers are coming," Krivax said. "Concordat scouts on the rim have started confirming your data. 3 research stations went silent last week. The Council is still denying it, but the evidence is mounting. We don't have time for political games." Vigil studied the assembled representatives. Young beings, mostly from species that had grown up after the Devour War. They had no memories of the horror, but they had reviewed the records. They understood what was at stake. "Very well. The Awakening Protocol facility is in the core system. It's heavily protected, and the activation sequence is complex. It requires input from all of you simultaneously. If even one of you changes your mind during the process, it fails. Humanity built in that safeguard deliberately. The journey to the core system took 2 days. The facility turned out to be a massive sphere floating in the center of a star cluster, drawing power directly from solar radiation. Its surface was covered in symbols from 100 different languages. A message to any who found it: wake us only when all hope is lost. Inside, the activation chamber was designed to hold representatives from many species. Each had a station with controls adapted to their physiology. Vigil explained the sequence. They would each input their species' consent, along with evidence of the existential threat. The data would be transmitted to the computational matrices holding humanity's consciousness. The Devourers arrived 6 weeks after the Awakening Protocol was activated. They came through a breach at the galactic rim, far from the sealed passages humanity had closed 300 years ago. Either they had found a new way in, or the galaxy's expansion had created vulnerabilities in the old barriers. The first system to fall was a Concordat research outpost. 70,000 scientists and support staff vanished in 3 hours. By the time the distress signal reached the Council, there was nothing left but stripped planets and silent void. The Concordat military mobilized its fleets, but the responses were chaotic and uncoordinated. 3 centuries of peace had made them soft. Their ships were designed for patrol duties and minor conflicts, not existential warfare. The Devourer vessels cut through defensive formations like they were nothing. High Chancellor Vormix finally addressed the Concordat in full emergency session. "We face an unprecedented crisis. All available military forces are being redirected to establish defensive perimeters. Civilian evacuations from rim systems will begin immediately. We ask all member species to remain calm and trust in the Concordat's protection." Krivax watched the address from the ring station in human territory, where he and the other representatives waited for humanity to awaken. The Chancellor's words rang hollow. The Concordat had no answer to the Devourers. They were fighting with outdated tactics and insufficient firepower. How much longer? He asked Vigil. "The first wave will be ready in 48 hours, the AI replied. 5,000 individuals have volunteered to be first. They're undergoing physical reconstruction now. Their digital consciousness is being downloaded into newly grown biological bodies, enhanced with 3 centuries of technological improvements. Will 5,000 be enough to stop the initial Devourer incursion? Possibly. To win the war? We'll need many more. But humanity is proceeding carefully. The transition from digital to physical existence is traumatic. They need time to adjust to biological limitations again." Sastek joined them at the observation window, looking out at the fleet of human ships gathering around the station. Automated systems were preparing vessels that had been mothballed for centuries. Weapons platforms were coming online. The entire military infrastructure of human territory was awakening. "The Council has issued warrants for all of us," she said quietly. "They're calling us traitors, saying we invited an invasion by tampering with human systems. They'd rather blame us than admit they were wrong," Krivax replied. "How are the evacuations going?" "Poorly. The Concordat doesn't have enough transport ships. Millions are being left behind on rim worlds. Some species are abandoning the Concordat entirely, taking their own ships and fleeing toward the core systems. It was a nightmare scenario playing out exactly as it had 300 years ago. History repeating because those who remembered had chosen to forget. The first humans emerged from their reconstruction chambers 3 days after the Devourer's initial attack. Krivax was there to witness it, along with the other representatives who had activated the protocol. Vigil had invited them to observe, saying they had earned the right to see what they had awakened. The chamber was vast, filled with thousands of medical pods arranged in perfect rows. As Krivax watched, the pods began opening. The humans inside sat up slowly, carefully, as if testing botas they had not worn in centuries. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Their forms were baseline human, recognizable from historical records, but enhanced in subtle ways. They moved with predatory grace. Their eyes held an alertness that suggested accelerated processing. Some had visible cybernetic implants, sleek and integrated rather than crude attachments. A woman stepped forward from the group. She wore simple clothing but carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her hair was dark, her skin bronze, her age impossible to determine. She could have been 30 or 300. "I am Commander Sarah Chun," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I led human forces during the final campaigns of the first Devourer War. I volunteered to return first because I remember what we face. Thank you for waking us. I know it wasn't an easy decision." Krivax found his voice. "Commander, I'm Ambassador Krivax. We activated the awakening protocol because the Concordat refused to act. I hope we made the right choice?" Commander Chun smiled, but it was a warrior's smile, edged with sadness. "There are no right choices in war, Ambassador. Only necessary ones. We spent 3 centuries in digital paradise, exploring concepts beyond biological comprehension. Coming back to flesh, to pain, to mortality. It's a sacrifice. But we gave our word we would protect this galaxy. So here we are." She turned to address the other awakened humans. "I know you're all disoriented. I know returning to physical form feels like wearing chains after flying free. But you remember your oath. You remember what the Devourers do to worlds, to civilizations, to everything they touch. We stopped them once. We'll stop them again." The humans responded with nods and grim determination. There were no cheers, no battle cries, just quiet acceptance of what needed to be done. Over the following week, humanity mobilized with efficiency that astonished Krivax. More humans awakened each day, taking up positions throughout the territory. Ships launched from mothball facilities. Weapons platforms activated. And most impressive, humanity began coordinating with what remained of the Concordat military presence on the rim. The first joint engagement happened at a mining system. The Devourers were in the process of consuming. Concordat forces had been fighting a desperate holding action, buying time for civilian evacuation. They were losing, down to 30 ships from an original force of 200. Then humanity arrived. 500 human vessels translated from faster than light directly into the combat zone. They moved in perfect coordination. Their tactics evolved over 3 centuries of digital wargaming. The Devourers, expecting the same resistance they had encountered before, found themselves facing an entirely different opponent. Human weapons had improved. Ships that could phase through enemy fire. Energy weapons that tracked targets across dimensional barriers. Nanomachine swarms that infiltrated Devourer vessels and dismantled them from within. But it was the tactics that truly surprised the Devourers. Humanity didn't fight with raw aggression. They fought with surgical precision, targeting specific vessels to create cascading failures in Devourer formations. They used the enemy's strength against them, luring large forces into kill zones where overwhelming firepower could be brought to bear. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Devourer force was destroyed. The Concordat ships that survived were stunned. They had expected humanity to be powerful, but this level of capability exceeded all projections. Commander Chun broadcast to the surviving Concordat vessels, all ships. "This is Chun. fall back to the second perimeter and await reinforcements. We'll hold this system. And to the Concordat command, we need to talk. This piecemeal defense isn't sustainable. We need coordinated strategy. But the Concordat Council remained silent. They had not acknowledged humanity's return. Officially, the humans fighting and dying to protect Concordat worlds did not exist. The political paralysis was complete. Krivax took it upon himself to become an unofficial liaison. He traveled between human territory and Concordat space, carrying messages, coordinating actions, trying to build bridges between the Council's pride and humanity's pragmatism. "They're afraid of us," Commander Chun told him during one meeting. "They see what we can do and remember why they were relieved when we left. They'd rather lose systems to the Devourers than admit they need us." "Some species are cooperating," Krivax pointed out. "The younger ones, the ones who didn't experience the first war. They're willing to work with you. It's not enough. The Devourers are committing more forces every day. We estimate they've sent 10% of their strength through the breach so far. If they go to 20%, even humanity can't stop them without Concordat cooperation. We need their resources, their personnel, their industrial capacity. What can I do?" Chun looked at him with those ancient, tired eyes. "Make them see reason before it's too late. Show them that pride is a luxury they can't afford." The turning point came at the Battle of Threshold Station. It was a massive civilian habitat orbiting a gas giant home to 15 million beings from 40 different species. The Devourers surrounded it with a fleet of 3,000 ships, preparing to consume everything. The Concordat military couldn't reach the station in time. Only human forces were close enough to respond. 2,000 human ships against 3,000 Devourer vessels, fighting to protect civilians who officially didn't acknowledge their existence. Krivax watched the battle through long-range sensors from his ship. It was brutal. Humanity fought with everything they had, but the numbers were against them. Ships were destroyed, humans died, but they held their ground. For 36 hours, they fought without rest, without reinforcement, buying time for evacuation ships to reach the station. Commander Chin's flagship was at the heart of the battle. Her voice broadcast continuously, coordinating forces, adapting tactics, refusing to yield a single meter of space. Krivax listened to her tactical commands and realized he was witnessing something rare. Leadership that inspired not through speeches but through example.